let's go ahead and begin. This is September 13th, 2022. I'm Diane Barrett with the BE Collection, and I'm presenting Barbara Embick. And do you want to give your full career title? How you're listed?
Yeah, I was in records and information management.
Okay. Was it for any particular, was it in education or finance, or was it any particular direction?
Well, it was managing primarily for corporations, and then my last 20 years was actually with a law firm. So managing their paper records, offsite storage, development of digital records, and database systems, and retention, records retention.
Wow. Are you a mathematician?
I have an associate's degree in math.
See, I could tell that. I would never sign up for a job like yours. I'm terrible. That's amazing. What an amazing career. So 30 years?
Actually over 40 years.
Wow. Huh.
I kind of stumbled into it accidentally. I had gotten my associate's degree in math and didn't really want to teach, and so decided to I guess now it would be called a take a year off, but the year went into many years. And I started working for Blue Cross in Pennsylvania, in the Lehigh Valley in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And I'm not exactly sure. There was a new head of the company, and I'm not exactly sure what he saw in me, but he put me on some projects, and that evolved into asking me if I wanted to take some courses in this field. And at the time, there were not programs in the universities for information management, records management.
I can see that.
But the University of Southern California had a program.
Did they?
And so I did correspondence courses for a couple of years through the University of Southern California to learn about, we started with forms design. So this was back in the 70s. Mm-hmm. So as you can imagine, an organization like Blue Cross would have lots of forms. Mm-hmm. And we also had the Medicare contract in Pennsylvania. So it was tons of forms, and a lot of them were very outdated, had been photocopied so many times you couldn't really read the print on them anymore. And so it kind of started with that, with learning forms design, and evolved into then, like I said, I took classes for a couple of years and to a full-scale program. So we were designing our own forms. Within the first couple of years, I had a staff, and I
always wondered who designed all those forms. Now I know.
Yeah,
so many forms, right?
Yeah. So and then we obviously created lots of records, and had an offsite storage problem. So I instituted their offsite storage management program for their records. And of course,
so was this all over the country?
No, this is just in this particular Blue Cross in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. So each back then, I don't know how it is now. Mm-hmm. But back then, each Blue Cross office was its own independent office.
I see. I didn't know that.
Now, they belong to a larger organization, but
Blue Cross did?
Yeah.
It's always considered a premier insurance to have that Blue Cross.
Right.
I remember that.
Yep.
As an
so
Mhm.
So yeah, so that's where it kind of all started. Like I said, I'm not exactly sure what he saw in me, but anyhow, I made a 40-something, 46-year career out of it.
It was
And
great, isn't it, to think if somebody could be inspired by you and find a niche that would work for you, and it also
well,
work for them.
yeah, one of I think my proudest accomplishments is the number of people that I've mentored in my life
Uh-huh.
in this profession. Um, probably more so at the last company, which was a law firm here in South Carolina. And I have people now that are head of information governance programs at really prestigious law firms. So, I feel like I played a role in
Yeah, how wonderful.
them moving on, and
Huh?
yeah,
So
I
you
love
passed
young
on what he
people.
gave to you.
Yeah,
Uh-huh. Great.
yeah.
So where were you born?
I was born in a little town called Jersey Shore, Pennsylvania.
Uh-huh.
Not Jersey Shore, New Jersey, but Jersey Shore, Pennsylvania. And we lived in a even smaller town called Avis, which was about 7 miles from Jersey Shore. Less than 1,000 people lived there then, and less than 1,000 people still live there.
Really, that amazing, isn't it?
Yep, yep.
So you still have family there?
Um, the the Embick side of my family is predominantly in that area. My mother was Italian, and her many of her family still live there, but they had more of a tendency to move on out. And Jersey Shore and Avis are in the central part of Pennsylvania, and we actually moved to Allentown, Pennsylvania, when I was a senior in high school.
No, I've heard of that.
Yeah, that's on the east.
Mhm. Right.
The Billy Joel song, if you've heard the Billy Joel song, Allentown, it's not really
Right.
about Allentown, it's about Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
I see. Oh, really? Huh?
Yeah,
All these things you don't know.
yeah. But
So
I guess Bethlehem didn't sound as good in the song, so it used Allentown.
it's too Christian. It's very Bethlehem, you're associated with Christianity. I do.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it just didn't flow right. So Allentown was the home of Mack trucks.
So that's important. Did they build them there?
Yep,
Huh,
yep. I have a lot of friends that worked for Mack trucks.
really? Why do you think it's maintained that small population?
Well, now
Consistently?
Allentown's a big place, but Avis, well, because there are larger towns,
Mhm.
not too far away. It's just it it'd be
That's what it
controlled
is.
by mountains on both sides,
Mhm.
and then the larger places on each end. So for example, when I was a kid, there was a canal that ran through there. When I was a kid, we go ice skating on that canal. So it kind of has natural borders
Right.
to it.
I grew up with the other side of Halsted. It was a street, ran all through Chicago, but you could define where you lived by the sides.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. That area was all steel company towns,
Uh-huh.
steel production.
And did you have siblings?
I have an older sister
Mhm.
who lives in Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
And I had another sister who passed away before either of us ever met her.
Uh,
So, but my sister and I are very close.
and where does she live?
She lives in Lansdale, Pennsylvania.
So
Her
she's
name
still
is
living there
Linda.
in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
where did you migrate from to get to where you are now?
In the I guess it was the late 70s, I I had an itch to, I felt like I had gotten as far as I could go at Blue Cross. And so I started applying for jobs. And long story short, I ended up working for a consulting company out of Reading, Pennsylvania, who sent me on assignments. And so one of my first assignments was at a nuclear plant here in South Carolina.
I see.
So I came down I was only supposed to be here 3 weeks, and
Yes.
was living in a hotel, and was working with another records manager developing the retention schedules for the nuclear plant.
I see. Wow.
So then that three-week assignment turned into 4 months, and the plant was getting ready to go live. And
In a hotel the whole time? Did you stay?
Yes, I was in a hotel the whole time. Went away every weekend, because the good thing about South Carolina is you're close to the mountains and you're close to the ocean. So, and had made some friends by then. Right. And so would do a lot of, and I was a big camper and hiker, and so would do a lot of that kind of stuff. But anyhow, they had a job come open for the records manager for the plant for the go live. And so I applied for the job and I got it.
They wanted you.
So I was with them about 5 years. I mentioned to you yesterday that I had a woman there file a sexual harassment case against me. Right. My employees knew I was gay.
How did they find out? How did they know that? Was that something you said? Or?
Yeah, I wasn't closed about it. I didn't go around, in the halls. I mean, we're talking back in the 80s, so I wasn't like going around with the sign on myself or,
lesbian, right?
Yeah, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, and there were rumors. I used to ride bicycle. A friend of mine and I, we'd ride our bikes to work and back. And when we rode 25 miles, it was 25 miles from where we started to the plant. So then,
in great shape.
I was
yeah,
a skinny little thing. And anyhow, there were
miles a day.
that, we were together in the shower and all kinds of stuff. I mean, we were just friends. It was never true. And anyhow, so this woman that worked for me filed this sexual harassment case. And at that time in South Carolina, it was a right to work state. It still is a right to work state. They called me into human resources, and I went to see a lawyer. And but basically,
how did you find out about it? Did they actually formally serve you with a complaint?
Yeah, the HR department, told me that this person had filed a sexual harassment case. And back then,
How awful. How awful.
It was awful.
Yeah.
Back then you still gave people like a pat on the back or something like that for, doing a good job. It was still the age of being able to, touch people. I mean, you can't do that anymore. So, but that got interpreted as that I was making a sexual advance to this woman, which there was no way in hell I was, because there was no way. I have never been attracted to a straight woman to begin with. So, anyhow. But I went to see the lawyer, and
so this was somebody that you felt you had a positive relationship with.
Yeah, she was an employee,
right?
I mean, she was just another one of the workers that that I was working with. I mean, that I was supervising. the reality was that I wasn't a local. I wasn't part of the local system, and I really think that was the major thing. They wanted somebody else. Some of the girls in the group or women in the group wanted somebody else to be their supervisor. And
was your department primarily women?
Yes.
Uh,
Not so much anymore, but records management, back in the 80s, 70s, 80s and stuff was primarily women, a women workforce. So, but anyhow, the lawyer, we talked about it, and I ended up resigning.
wow.
And
I'm so sorry. That's so grossly unfair. I mean, you don't forget those things.
No, you don't. But it's the thing that spurred me to be an activist and help found the gay lesbian pride movement in South Carolina. So
that part was good.
Yeah.
Right.
So my other job, I was without a job then. I was in a relationship, and the relationship kind of failed after that as well.
Sure.
As you can imagine,
huge
I was
stress.
Yeah.
Really.
I was in bad shape.
Did you ever get to confront the other person who accused you? Did you ever have a conversation or no?
No.
But you chose to resign, or was it recommended?
The lawyer recommended that was the safest thing to do.
Really? Because the lawyer must have felt that it was just going to keep on going.
Well, the funny thing is, that was Melissa Burnett, and Burnett, Shutt, and McDaniel have a firm now, and they handle a lot of social justice cases in South Carolina. They do tremendously good work.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe I contributed to.
I know, maybe they could be using your case as a model for teaching.
So, and Necky Shutt, the second partner in that firm, is actually a gay woman who has been involved with the gay lesbian pride movement in South Carolina for a number of years. So, yeah. So,
I'm sorry that happened. I mean, you can't. There aren't words for it, really. And then
you can't do
your relationship. I mean, so you lost your integrity. You lost your relationship. I mean, what more?
I almost lost my life over it too.
Did you?
Because I realized I was 34, I think, when that happened. I realized that I had never really dealt with my own sexuality, and so it pushed me into having to do that. I lost my relationship, I lost my job, I lost my relationship. I was having money problems eventually because I wasn't working. I was depressed. I got in a bad way, realized I hadn't dealt with my own sexuality. And fortunately I sought help.
Right.
And started seeing.
Was that recommended, or did you seek it on your own?
I did it on my own. I knew that I needed help.
The reason I'm being so pointed about this is that it's a huge burden that was placed upon you that you did not seek. And then the consequences of that many times are suicidal ideation, suicide. I mean, just this whole depression, ball of wax, as they say.
I was definitely
hard to break out of it.
Yeah, I was definitely suicidal. In fact, one of the pictures that I got for you guys is a picture of me and my therapist from a few years ago, but she was my therapist for off and on for over 20 years.
Right.
And she literally saved my life. I just attribute her help to getting past that hurdle.
Mhm.
And
Is she a lesbian herself?
no,
No. Mhm.
married to a preacher, as a matter of fact.
Well, that's wonderful that it works so well, huh? That you
Yeah.
worked with her.
Yeah, she's
gift.
just a good soul. I mean,
Uh-huh.
she's just a good person. So they come and they march. Well, I don't know that they have in the last couple of years. Her husband is older than her, but they come and march in the Gay Pride Parade every month, almost
Good.
every year. So
They were
anyhow,
inspired by you, right?
well, I don't know about that, but
Oh,
anyhow.
well, just say it. Probably true.
So then after that, so when I was in those periods, because I've had to rely on my second business several times. I'm a pretty good carpenter.
Ah, good.
And so I built decks and stuff like that
Really?
while all that was going on to
Uh-huh.
sustain myself.
Just that
And
large muscle activity, huh? That they say is good for depression.
yeah, I guess
Yeah.
I didn't really think about it that way. It was
Right.
good for making some money, that's
It's
for sure.
sort of a well-known positive outlet for depression is large muscle activity. And
Yeah.
building a deck is large muscle activity.
Yeah. So for a couple of years until I found another job and got in the mindset for another job. Yeah, that's how I made my cash. And I was living with a friend then, and she was helping me out with a place to stay. And then eventually I went to work for an environmental engineering company who did asbestos abatement as their records person. And then after that, I went with the South Carolina Department of Probation and Parole. I was with them for 5 years, and I was the director of records management. And I put in their program for managing their mass quantities of records. They had the probation and parole had a main office here in Columbia, and then they had 32 smaller offices.
So when you moved to that direction, back into your, I don't know, your forte, I guess, did you continue your deck building and?
Oh, we did some.
Uh-huh.
I had a friend that was a teacher, and so in the summer we would do some.
Mhm.
And it was during that same time that I was at probation that we started the gay pride movement.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but the first meeting of the South Carolina Gay Pride Movement was in my backyard.
Yay.
And
What's the
we
date? What's the date? Remember, this is an archive project, so do you remember the date of that first meeting?
yeah, I got it written down. I actually made
perfect.
some notes about
Yeah.
all this stuff. It was September 24th, 1989.
Okay. And that was the first gay pride project meeting in South Carolina.
It was 2 days after Hugo had hit South Carolina. So this major hurricane hit the state. We had this thing planned for weeks. And the hurricane comes and we're talking about it and realized that, this was a major disaster in South Carolina.
Right.
Realized that a lot of people were going to have trouble getting here. But we decided to go ahead with the meeting, and we had 50 people show up from various places in the state.
That's wonderful.
And it will be one of the pictures that I include.
Oh, good. Right.
Is of that group. So that was
try
the
to
first
put that in as you talk about it, your photo. So
okay.
great.
Yeah, so that was the very first kind of like get together, or how many people have an interest in this? Should we do it? Should we not do it?
So so now you're telling the story of an activist. How do you start reaching out to people that you know would support this?
Well, well, the first thing was to get in touch with, people throughout the state. And one of our founding members and very involved, and Sheila probably talked about her a little bit. Harriet Hancock was an attorney in Columbia, and she had a gay son, or has a gay son, and she was the head of PFLAG in South Carolina.
Oh, really?
And so, it was also during the AIDS crisis.
That's right.
We're talking about in the late 80s.
Right.
So there was just a whole community of people. Like I primarily was involved with the women's community. Harriet was definitely involved with the gay men's community. And I knew gay men, but I didn't know a broad range of them.
Right, or how to organize them, huh?
Yeah, and there were preachers, there were professional people, so
people were ready. I mean, all the AIDS
absolutely.
Stuff, I mean, right, they were ready.
Yeah. So we kind of called our collective, names together and came up with a list of people to get in touch with. And like I said, now I don't remember how many we actually invited, but 50 showed up.
That's good.
2 days after Hugo.
That's great. How much notice did they have prior to that, to the date?
Geez, I don't remember, but it was some time. I mean, because we had been planning it for a couple months.
And who's the we? Who's the other part of you?
Harriet, myself, and I really don't remember some of the other principals, but I'm sure there was a local pastor that was involved. I'm sure he was involved at the time. There were a bunch of female activists. I actually belonged to a group at that time called the Gourmet Club. We were like more of a newsletter, but it started out of potluck dinners.
Those famous potlucks. I love potlucks.
Yeah, so we had a whole mailing list of people and activists, and then Harriet definitely had a lot of contacts on the gay men's side, and then with parents and with preachers and stuff like that. So the original contact, like I said, I don't remember how many people we originally got in touch with, but 2 days after Hugo, 50 showed up. So
that's great. I mean, you think they were motivated.
Yes, and then
a terrible disaster. Do you think that the sexual harassment case against you motivated you?
Oh, absolutely, it did.
Right. Good.
That was my whole motivation.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Was like,
that's appropriate.
My mother raised me to be a fighter, so I was like,
yay for your mother, right?
No way in hell am I going to put up with this. Nobody should have to go through this.
That's right.
So
your sister, is she a fighter also?
Yes.
Yeah, good. So she raised both of you to be fighters.
Yeah, my not to digress, but my father left when I was 3 years old.
Wow.
So for 4 or 5 years, it was my mother and my sister and myself. And to the day she died, it was us three girls. And I also had a very strong female role model in one of my aunts on my father's side. And they instilled in us from the very get-go to be independent, strong women. So
good. Did that sexual harassment woman stay employed at that place?
Yeah. Yes.
And was your department primarily women?
Yes, it was all women.
Wow. I would think they would be very anxious.
So, but yeah. So then we did, the first march was on June 23rd, 1990.
Okay.
And we had almost 2,000 people.
Do you have any paperwork like flyers or anything from that?
I do.
Okay. If you send me some.
I even have my speech.
You have what?
Speech. I even have a
Okay.
copy of my marked up speech.
We will, I will talk to our archivist and we'll try to post that into your interview. And, because that's archival material. I'm
Yeah.
learning about archives. And
Yeah.
they appreciate having these originals and sign it on your speech, put your original signature on it, and then I'll let Greg know that it's an original. So
Yeah,
that's great, good.
It's
No,
kind of
that's-
marked up, but
Yeah.
and it's how many years old? 33 years old. So but yeah.
Right, great. I mean, that's only if you'd like to do that. I sort of imagine.
Yeah, no, I think that's
Yeah.
a good idea. The Historic Foundation in Columbia has actually created a huge gay lesbian archive, LGBTQ archive, and have it residing at the University of South Carolina library.
You may
So,
get a copy of the librarian at Cal State Dominguez Hills who sent us a thank you letter for the information that we're providing with the collection. And they have actually received funding, grant funding for gay and lesbian. So
yeah,
good
good.
for us, right?
More
So this should
people
only support that, right?
That's exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, they're back in the situation where people are trying to wipe us out again, or
I
like
know.
shove us under the rug. And people just aren't, gay and lesbian people are just not putting up with it. And, I think, I don't want to get off too much on this activism business, but we really need to look to the young people in the world today, because the young people today do not look at LGBTQ people in the same way that their parents did, or
No.
that their grandparents did.
Right.
They're very open-minded, they're very progressive,
Mhm.
and we need to capture or corral those people to help us.
Mhm.
And I think we're seeing that. I don't want to get off on this too much either, but I think we're seeing that with the abortion business. More women have registered to vote in the last couple months than anybody.
That's great. I didn't know that. I will sign you up after this interview. We're doing the Roe v. Wade interviews also, where the person, you get to express your feelings, your opinions about that decision. It's it's called Your Vote, Your Voice.
Yeah, that's good.
I know,
So,
it's amazing, actually. And each one is so unique. Each woman's feelings, expressions, thoughts. We're very distressed by it.
it's an awful thing.
Yes.
Yep.
But that's
So-
interesting. I didn't know that about the increase in women voters. See,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
why by doing this, I learn all the time. Every day I'm learning something new.
Yeah. More women have registered to vote
Great.
in the last couple months since
Well,
Roe
makes
was
sense.
overturned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really all we have. Every day I get all these, send me $150. Send me I mean, who has time, who has the money to send somebody many somebody's $150 or 300 or 50 or I mean,
Right.
that's costs a lot of money to send the postage out.
Right. The best thing we can do is vote.
That's right. That's right.
So, and get other people to vote, and hopefully help
Time will
ferment
tell.
some young people into voting in the right direction. So,
But
anyhow.
you're right about the young people are much more accepting. They don't think that they have to be gay or they have to back away or, they are who they are and they accept you are who you are. I like that.
Yep. So, yeah, we did the march, and then I started working for the law firm in 1997, and I retired there in 2018. So
That was a long time.
there was my most, in my career wise, was probably the most in-depth work that I did in records and information management.
Uh,
So our law firm still is the largest law firm in South Carolina.
uh,
But when I started in 97, they had about 150 attorneys in 5 offices, including one in Atlanta.
mhm.
When I left, we had about 550 attorneys
Oh, that's
in
incredible.
about 12 offices. And my understanding is now is they're up to close to 2,000 attorneys and many more states.
That's incredible. So
Yeah.
people must really go to law school and then they graduate and then they go into your firm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good firm. So,
Yeah, must be.
so when I joined them in 97, they were seeking somebody. They had a real bad problem with retrieving their records. So they had a lot of records in offsite storage, and they were dependent on physical records at that time.
Mhm.
And the attorneys would want to call back a file, and they were having difficulty finding the file because of the system they had in place.
Mhm.
So that's how I got hired there, was to
Organize
put
that
in
system.
a new system. And so we literally in the first 2 years went through their offsite storage facility and indexed every file. And let's see, I want to say there was 175,000 boxes in storage. So 175,000 times about, 20, at least 20 files in every box.
Wow, that's incredible.
So it was a boatload of stuff.
Also,
So I hired a bunch of temporary help, and we set up a database to be able to dump this data into. And we literally had people pulling files out, filling out a sheet with the information that I wanted them to gather.
Mhm.
So it was basically client matter number and name of the file and dates and stuff like that. And then we had somebody keying all that information in to the database. And so we created this database of their offsite storage. So within a year, it was showing that, if somebody requested a file, we could put our hands on it right away.
That's amazing. You're like a computer yourself.
Well, I
You think
love
like a computer, right?
I love data.
Yeah.
So then we
What's this mark on your arm? What does that say? I keep seeing
was
that.
my mother.
That's your mother?
It
Huh.
says mom, and it has a cross and doves flying to heaven.
Oh, how nice. Huh.
Yeah.
Wow. So you did that after she died, obviously?
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
She was living with me when she died.
Was she?
Yeah.
She must have been an incredible person. Do you have any homosexuals besides yourself and your family?
On the Embick side of my family, there definitely are.
Really? Okay.
I have a couple of cousins that I know are gay.
Okay.
And
we track that in our interviews. We don't track them, but we just track that they exist. So
my father's family, there were like 13 kids, and the majority of them were women.
Mhm.
And I'm sure some of my aunts were gay, but back then got married and stuff. And it was actually one of the aunt that I was mentioning earlier that I was really close to, connected me with for the first time with a cousin who was gay.
Mhm.
And she just kept telling me, Barbara, you guys need to meet, you need to meet. And anyhow, so I am positive my Aunt Viva knew that I was gay and that Grace was gay.
Did you
And
meet that person? Did you ever meet the person she wanted you to meet?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Good.
yeah.
How'd it turn out?
Uh, it turned out well.
Uh-huh.
She lives in the Midwest though, so I haven't seen her now in probably 20 years. But
Yeah.
when my aunt died and stuff, we saw each other then as well. But
Mhm. Did
but it's been
you find it difficult to maintain a relationship when you had all this turmoil going on? Obviously you did, but then as you continued with your activism, um, did it become easier to be in a relationship with another woman at that time?
yeah, and when during Gay Pride, I actually met someone,
Mhm.
and we had a relationship for about 5 years.
Mhm.
Anyhow, but then a couple years later, I met her name's Sharon, and we're pretty much friends now for about 10 years. But we were together for a long period of time, and I would do anything on earth for her if she needed me to.
Sounds like a relationship.
Yeah,
Right.
we're good buddies, but we lived together early on. That was kind of it. My mother passed away in 2010, and my stepfather is still alive. My real father died when I was 15. So
does your father live with you, your stepfather?
no,
No.
he lives in independent living about 5 miles from here, and he's 92 now, and I have all of his powers of attorney. I do all of his he's got macular degeneration.
Really? Wow, that's awful.
So he's legally blind. So I do all his medicine and all of his finances and all of that kind of stuff.
So what's your dream for your future? Are you still going to stay involved in activism? And certainly is a good time for it.
Yeah, I do what I can. I was mentioning to you yesterday, I've had a lot of health issues in the last couple years, and I'm more of an armchair activist now, and like when I can, I write a check too, and I definitely make phone calls and all of that kind of stuff, and stay politically motivated and kind of thing. And then I also, when I retired, I started a photography business.
Did you? I see all your pictures on your wall.
Yeah, I actually, that's what I really wanted to do from a young
Really?
girl. And just back in the 70s, it was really hard to make a living doing that.
I think it's
so
still.
yeah. So anyhow, so now I have a photography business, and I do mostly fine art photography. And then I have a website and all that, and
Good.
make regular posts on the internet and Instagram. I have an Instagram account, and just make regular posts there and stuff.
You're unstoppable.
Well,
Hey.
and my aunt and my mom were like, just don't ever give up on anything. So once you give in, it's you kind of write your own path, and
you listen to them. Right.
Yeah. So I do that, and I do carpentry stuff around here, but it's kind of, now I'm down to just building birdhouses and benches and things like that. Yeah.
So if you knew that your life was going to end, how would you like to be remembered?
I think for the mentoring that I have done with a number of people, and help them, in their careers, and whether it was learning information management, or learning how not to get angry in a meeting, how to control yourself and get your point across there, and just teaching. Like I said, when I started out, like I was a math major, and I didn't want to teach math, so I so I went to work, but the reality is in my career, I did a lot of teaching. And so yeah, and that just hopefully that people thought I was a good person, I guess.
I would agree with all those. So do you have questions you'd like to ask me? Collection or whatever.
No, I think, oh, yeah, I do.
You can recruit for the collection.
Well, I did. I did put it out on Facebook, and I will do it again. I tried to put it in the group. There's a group, lesbian group that I belong to, and then you're not allowed to solicit in there. So,
thank you.
I have to figure out a different angle.
I think it works if they can look at the webpage.
Yeah.
And of course, like you and I talked, to call, my phone number's in there, call me.
Yeah.
But the webpage has a big selection of what we do, and it looks good. YouTube doesn't have the reputation the webpage does.
Yeah. So I will put it, I will be posting it again periodically on Facebook.
Yeah.
Or send it to some individual friends that I know of. One of my friends from Pennsylvania is an Italian plastering art.
Really? How interesting, huh?
And so she sent me a note back and said, "Do you think they would be interested in a woman trying to make it in a man's business?" And I said, "Absolutely, they would."
We have interviewed women who have done that.
Yeah, I mean, and she
Tell her
does
to
incredible
check
work.
out Pat Williams.
Pat Williams.
Right.
I don't know why that name sounds familiar.
Well, she started out with a college degree and everything. And she realized, I want to buy a house. I'm not going to make it on this income. And so she became a tradeswoman. And she became the supervisor of the maintenance of all those buildings behind me in this picture.
Oh, maybe I did watch her interview.
Yeah, she was one of the first interviews, actually.
Yeah, I think I watched it. But this woman's name, her name's Lori Bloomstrom. That's what I told her. She does incredible work. I mean, it's just absolutely gorgeous work.
Well, that's so interesting because it also, we don't advertise really, but it does do, like if you would like to have a pug, I know somebody who has 80 of them.
Yeah, no.
Right. But she's Pug Nation. She's a pug rescue.
Are you going to open up to people under 30 at any point?
I don't think so. You know why I chose that? I don't trust. I just don't trust that it can't come back on somebody who hasn't really settled in their career. They don't feel that firm in their identity yet to fight off like what happened to you.
Right.
I mean, that was awful.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it still happens.
That's right. That's what I know. And so I'd say no.
Okay.
No, I never say never, but I don't see it as. And this way, we're getting a base of our own history, and that's the archivable information also, as well as guiding. Talk about mentoring. Young women can read these, and they can learn from them. That's why we make them fairly brief, so that it's a good resource for them.
When I posted the note about BE collection, I changed it from history to herstory.
Right.
Like
that, right? You forget that.
Because it's really
right. That's right.
Yeah. Well, and in South Carolina, it's still a good old boy system here. And I think it's not as bad as it used to be. I say it's not as bad, but now it's kind of almost going the other way. They just this past week voted. They didn't get enough votes for a full abortion ban in South Carolina, but it's bad enough. And it's just a bunch of old white boys, making these laws and stuff, but it's still that system where people think And unfortunately, there's a lot of women who still just do
Support it.
whatever it is their man says.
That's right.
This is the way our life is.
Do you think that'll change in our lifetime?
No,
No.
I don't. I've been waiting. I actually moved to South Carolina because I thought that my political activism would somehow help make a change here.
Mhm.
And here we are 40 years later, and the politics are as bad now or maybe worse than they have ever been. The good news is, though, there are a lot of women organizations in South Carolina standing up and making their voice heard. So I
That's
see the movement of women towards trying to get some kind of equality in South Carolina bigger than it has ever been. It's just that until we can get rid of these politicians, it's not going to change. But there's an organization called WREN, Women's. No, see what's the second word is, Women's
Rights.
Empowerment Movement. Anyhow, I can't remember what R stands for, but they started about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. They probably actually started in some back boardrooms maybe 5 or 6 years ago, but they have built a whole network of very strong women, both Democrats and Republicans. And they are like really giving hell to these old white men. So
Beware.
we'll see.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
I'm having one. Thank you. You're part of it.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.